I'm Dr. Andy Anderson, Chief Medical Officer for Aurora Healthcare. Public health officials have called the growing opioid epidemic the worst drug crisis in American history. In the last dozen years, opioid-related overdose deaths have more than tripled in Wisconsin. At Aurora Healthcare, we are dedicated to helping each other live well. It is our duty as caregivers to help wage this war against opioid abuse, and understanding how truly deadly these drugs can be is the first step. With this in mind, please watch Wisconsin Eyes Straightforward, the truth about addiction.
I always had good friends around and animals, and I showed horses since I was 10 years old.
You know, I think attitude has a really great impact on how able you are to enjoy life.
You know, growing up, I always felt really supported. I was lucky.
My parents were very good to us. They were very caring and laid back.
My kids are there, my kids are happy, and their joy brings me joy.
I see things differently now because of my emotional growth. Drugs or not, you're still the same person.
Hey guys, Sky Tickinen here today. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about addiction, what it is, what it isn't. I'm a substance abuse counselor. I've been working in the field for about a decade. In addition to that, I do some policy work around substance abuse issues. And I'm also in recovery for 14 years from heroin addiction. I bet you thought that we were going to tell you about how bad drugs are or teach you about different drugs. We're not going to do that. We're going to teach you about addiction. And I think that's something that we can all agree is a bad thing. When we first started this project, we were in a room of really important people, and we were all talking about how to stop the opioid epidemic, how to get young people to understand how serious it was. And what we realized was that nobody in that room had the power to do that. You guys do. So we're going to teach you a little bit about how you can help and what you can do about this. So I know how my addiction got started, but addiction doesn't discriminate, and it affects people from all different walks of life. So today we wanted to show you a group of different people, and they'll tell you how they got started using.
Starting at the age of 12, I started socially party drinking on the weekends and smoking some weed, and then through high school, partied a little bit more maybe than your average high school kid would. Began hanging out with people that drank and smoked a lot too, and got into a really bad relationship. So I just started drinking a lot. Every minute I wasn't working, I was drinking. And then in the midst of all of that, I met the next guy that I thought was for sure the love of my life. And 6 months into our relationship, he introduced crack to me, and that spiraled out of control. And in the midst of that, he started abusing me physically, emotionally. It was terrifying.
I started using drugs and alcohol at a young age, probably 13 years old, and it's something that escalated through the years until I was, you know, through my early 20s, and you know, I started with marijuana, and I continued with opiate drugs, experimented with psychedelics and all kinds of other stuff, and by the time I was 21 or 22 years old, I was physically dependent on opiate drugs, OxyContin specifically. And you know, I was still employed, and I was still, you know, able to keep a job and you know, be somewhat functional. And so, and this kind of played into my delusion that this wasn't a problem.
I started using when I was probably 15 or 16. Before using, I played a lot of sports. I had really good grades, kind of life going on track, you know, a lot of good friends. And then I started smoking marijuana at age like 15, 16, drinking a little bit. And then when I was 18, after graduating, just a couple months after graduating, I had to have like a really major surgery done. And they put me on painkillers. And so that was like the first time I really experienced pills at all. So I was definitely overusing them, maybe without knowing it at the time. And I ran out not only earlier than I should have, but pretty abruptly. And so then I was like, I need more. And so I was reaching out to friends, and probably on and off for like 2 or 3 years after that, I was using painkillers, marijuana, and drinking a little bit.
I was addicted to opioids, and I believe that started because back in I think my sophomore year, I got mono, and I was put on tramadol to help with sleep and pain. It said 1 every, whatever, but sometimes I would take 2 because I would just want to go to sleep because I was so miserable because mono was terrible. So I think that's what started it without me even knowing. One night I got into a really big fight with my boyfriend, and I I texted one of our friends, and I knew he smoked Percocets, Perc 30s, and I was like, hey, let me try that, because all I would hear about all the time from everyone, it seems like everyone in this county was on it, is how awesome it was, and you forgot about everything, and that's what I wanted, because I was mad, and I didn't know how to emotionally handle what was going on, and I didn't even know what was going on. I just knew I was mad and whatever,
I did not really start dabbling into drug use until I was in high school. Once I got started smoking weed in freshman year, that kind of was where it just was smoking weed. It was what it was. I never really bought it or anything like that, but just when it was around, sometimes I did smoke it. That kind of worked up into adulthood, where I'm 18, 19, living on my own, not with my parents anymore, not regulated by rules of anyone. This is where partying, I would say, comes into play for me, where it's more adding things like Vicodin, Percocet to your drinking. So that kind of was my young life. Definitely got exposed to a lot of other drugs that way. Acid, cocaine, mushrooms, just drugs that I, at an earlier age, would have never even thought would be around me.
My first taste of, understanding any kind of addiction would be, I was addicted to alcohol before anything. I never had enough. I could never get enough. More. I was probably in maybe 4th grade. I remember one of my friends had some pills. He showed me them, and I recognized them because my older cousins, they were taking them before, and they're like, yeah, this is speed, makes you feel good. I sniffed huffing glue or gasoline, that feeling of just being away somewhere else, I just continued to chase that feeling.
So if you know anything about addiction, you've probably heard of this idea of rock bottom. And in the recovery community, we say that rock bottom is whenever you decide to stop digging. The people in the video here will tell you about their rock bottoms and when they decided to stop digging.